speakers during the Q&A section. Before presenting today's session, I would like to take this opportunity to put this webinar in context and introduce the framework that BIST, together with the 7 BIST centers, are putting together in the area of career development. We are developing a series of actions for our researchers in order to support professional progression beyond academia. BIST is highly committed to promoting that the scientific talent that is being developed at the BIST centers is transferred and has an impact by adding value to other sectors such as industry, public policy, and education. For that, BIST is organizing a series of webinars to share the experience of researchers who have continued with their professional paths in different roles and sectors, and share useful and necessary information on how to approach these turns in careers. This is the second of a series of webinars that are being organized every 2 weeks. We are, of course, open to ideas and suggestions on topics which satisfy your interests, so please feel free to reach out to us at any time with your comments. And with this, we can get started. For this webinar, we have prepared a session in which we will have the chance to learn firsthand from 3 experts in the field of clinical trials management. We will discuss questions such as what career opportunities there are in this field and how can a scientific background fit well into the roles available, while sharing with us their personal experience. So who are they? Let me briefly introduce them to you. With us today, we have Dr. Ana Rivera, Director of Medical Affairs at the Vectura Group. Dr. Fernando Salvador, Scientific Manager at Solti. And Neus Vilalta, who is Clinical Operations Lead and Line Manager at Syneos Health. With no further ado, I thus invite Ana to take the lead and welcome her to speak.
Hello, good afternoon, everybody. So first of all, I would like to thank you. I would like to thank BIST for inviting me to participate in this webinar. For me, it's a great pleasure to be here and to have the opportunity to share my professional experience with all of you. So I am a pharmacist and I did my PhD in microbiology, and I did the PhD in Hospital Clinic of Barcelona. Now I'm working in medical affairs. I'm working in Vectura, which is a pharmaceutical company that is based in Cambridge, UK, and is developing inhalers, so inhalation devices. So I'm working in the respiratory area. During my presentation, I would like to talk about 2 things. So the first one is the way that I move from the research, academic research to the private sector, and the way that I ended up in medical affairs. And second, I would like to talk about the different roles that are involved with the clinical trials, but from the pharmaceutical company perspective, because later on, Fernando and Tanya will talk about the different roles from the academic research group perspective and a CRO perspective, respectively. For those who don't know what is a CRO, CRO stands for a Contract Research Organization, and basically is a company, it's a service company that the pharmaceutical company is hiring them in order to delegate them some activities. And mainly these activities are related to the management of the whole clinical trial. But there can be other activities that can be delegated, and I'm sure that Tanya will cover this later. Anyway, let's start with my movement from the academic research to the private sector. So when I was doing my PhD, when I was writing my thesis, it was clear for me that because the research in Spain was not easy, So in a way, meaning that I needed to look for funding every 2 years or every 4 years, I thought that I didn't want to do this in a way, and I would just work in a pharmaceutical company. And at the time that I was finishing my thesis, I decided to do a master. And the master was a master in monitoring clinical trials. It was given by SAME together with the University of Barcelona. So the master offered me the possibility at the end of the master to give me an internship and to have this internship in a company. Either it was a pharmaceutical company or a CRO. In my case, it was a CRO. So meaning that I started an internship with this CRO, and at the end of this internship, they allow me to work with them. So they offer me a contract. I think that doing a master, this is one of the possibilities, right? When you are doing a master, most of the masters are offering you at the end to have the possibility of this internship and to start working in a pharmaceutical company or in a CRO. So that means that if they like you and they think that you are a valuable person, probably you will have the opportunity to have a contract offer by the company as well. So working in the CRO, I was start working as a CRA, which is a clinical research associate. And basically this is a field-based role. It's a meaning that I needed to go to the different hospitals and monitoring this clinical trial, meaning that I needed to do some source data verification. So I needed to check that the information collected for the clinical trial was reliable and was consistent with the medical history of any patient that are in the hospitals. After working for a while in the CRO, I decided to move to a pharmaceutical company. And maybe you can ask why. Because my background was really scientific. I like science. And the way that I saw it, it was like working for a pharmaceutical company, although it was related to clinical trials. Maybe this role could be a little bit more scientific, a little bit more strategic, while working in a CRO, the role could be maybe a little bit more operational. That's why I decided to try to look for a job in a pharmaceutical company. So then I moved to a pharmaceutical company, and the role was clinical trial manager. First in Laboratorios Salvat, second in Laboratorios Almirall. So I would like to mention that there are two possible ways that you can be hired by a pharmaceutical company. It can be directly. So this was the way that I was hired by Laboratorios Salvat. So I was hired directly by them, but it can be through a CRO. And this was the way that I was hired when I started working in Almirall, meaning that I was hired by the CRO, but I was working in Almirall offices, right, all the time. And I was an external person, but I was working in the pharmaceutical company. I think that whenever you think that I don't want to be hired by a CRO and I would like to work directly or to be hired directly by a pharmaceutical company, I think that although it is through the CRO, again, if the company likes you and they find that you are valuable, at the end, they are going to hire you. And this is what happened to me. So at the end, I was hired by Almirall. Let's focus now on the roles. And specifically, I would like to talk about the role of clinical trial manager and in the pharmaceutical company, right? So basically, the role of clinical trial manager is the responsibility is to do the whole management of the clinical trial, the oversight of the clinical trial. And as we have mentioned before, this management most of the times is delegated to a CRO. But the type of roles is a little bit different. So in a way, in my experience, when I was working in Salvat and in Almirall, the clinical trial manager has a more scientific role because we were able to write the protocol. So we were writing the protocol ourselves. We never delegate the protocol to the protocol writing to a CRO. It can be done. I know that in some pharmaceutical companies, they delegate the writing of the protocol as well to the CRO. But in my case, either in Salvat and in Almirai, the writing of the protocol was done by the company. And also, of course, we were participating in all the discussions of the study design. So it was a very scientific role. And of course, it was, you participate also in the whole management of the clinical trial, but more looking for the oversight of the CRO. Okay? And of course, at the end, you were able to participate in the analysis of the results. And this was the part that I like the most as well. Because, you know, whenever you have the results, you are able to present the results either not only internally, but also externally with some experts. And this was the part that I liked the most, you know, the writing of the protocol or the study design and analysis of the results. So that's why I decided to move to medical affairs. But first, let me explain, which is this relationship of the different roles with the clinical trials, okay? So when we talk about clinical development, we are talking about from phase 1 clinical trials to phase 3. Okay, I don't know if you know about the different phases, but I'm going to mention very quickly just in case. So phase 1, it means that you are assessing safety, the safety of the drug, and it's mainly is assessed or normally is assessing healthy volunteers. Phase 2 can be phase 2A, that is the proof of concept. So you are testing for the very first time the efficacy of a drug in patients. Phase 2B, that is the dose finding. So you will try to select some doses that you think that are the most appropriate doses. And then phase 3 is when you test the drug in a very huge number of patients and also the safety. After this phase 3, you submit the dossier to the regulatory authorities, and then the drug is approved or not, okay? But it's approved to be marketed, to be in the market. So when we talk about clinical development, is more related to from phase 1 to phase 3. And when we talk about phase 4, this is once the product is in the market, and then is more related to medical affairs, okay? Before talking about medical affairs, I would like maybe to mention about other roles that are involved in clinical development with clinical trials. For example, when I was in Almirai, the clinical trial manager was the lead of a clinical study team. And this clinical study team consists of a monitoring trial coordinator that in a way the counterpart in the CRO will be the clinical research associate, the CRA. Then in the clinical study team, we have also a statistician, we have a statistical programmer, we have a drug safety officer that is responsible for the adverse events, and that's it. So you know, the clinical trial manager is working very closely with all these roles when managing the clinical trial. But there are other roles. We have the regulatory affairs as well, that you know, they are responsible for all the documentation needed for the clinical trial applications or the regulatory submissions. And also we have the clinical project leader. And the clinical project leader is the one who is responsible to define the clinical development plan. And the clinical development plan is defined based on the TPP. The TPP is the target product profile. So it means that for a specific drug, I need to define which is the way that I want this drug to look like when it's in the market, okay? So based on this, the clinical project leader is defining all the clinical trials that needs to be conducted by, with this drug in order to achieve the profile that it has been defined, okay? So more or less, these are the roles in the pharmaceutical company that are related to the clinical trial when it comes to clinical development, okay? Now, once the product is approved, we can start working with phase 4 studies, clinical trials, that the use is more or less to differentiate the product. So once the product is in the market, the medical affairs what needs to do is to talk with different experts or HCPs, healthcare practitioners, and try to understand which are the unmet needs of the patients in the current disease, right? Because there are some treatments already in the market, but still the patients need something different. So the phase 4, the aim of the phase 4 is to try to do these clinical trials and to try to differentiate your drug versus the others that are in the market, and also, to provide value or to fill in the gap of these patient unmet needs. Okay? Moreover, other studies that are related to medical affairs are probably, I'm sure that you have heard of it as the real-world studies, real-world evidence studies, that you are not working with the ideal patient, but you are working with patients that are in real life, so the real patient, any type of patient, and then you are conducting the studies testing your drug. Which was the way that I moved from a clinical trial manager to medical affairs? It was not easy, because normally if you know what it is requested to work in medical affairs, mainly they ask that you are a medical doctor. And if you are not a medical doctor, at least you need to have the PhD. So for this role, you need to have a very robust scientific background. So although I was working in Almirai, and the role in medical affairs was in Almirai, the medical director of medical affairs wanted a medical doctor. And they say, I don't want you because you are not a medical doctor. So we reached an agreement, and for a while, I was working in the 2 different roles at the same time. So I was working as a clinical trial manager, and this was in offices that were in Sant Feliu, so from Monday to Tuesday. And then from Wednesday to Friday, I was working in the center of Barcelona, or the offices of Almirai, in medical affairs. So, and this lasts a while, this lasts more or less 6 months, but at the end, they like me, and they offer me the job in medical affairs. So this is something that I would like you to think, because if you are not a medical doctor and you would like to work in medical affairs, now I think it's easier. They accept more other degrees, but I think that having a PhD would be a plus. Let's talk now about the role of medical affairs. There are 2 different roles of medical affairs. We need to think of global medical affairs, or we need to think of local medical affairs. So the role in global medical affairs is more strategic, defining the strategy, defining the way that I would like to promote the product, the way that, which are the clinical trials that I would like to do with this product, and the way that I would like to raise awareness with publications. And then it means that you need to build a lot of relationships with KOLs. But when it comes to local level, it means that you need to implement the global strategy in the market, right, in the different countries. And this is more related to execution. And for that appears the role of MSLs as well. So the MSLs are field-based as well. And for as MSL, let's say that it's more or less, imagine that the role of a sales rep and then the role of MSL. So the sales rep are the ones who are selling the drug, right? The product to physicians, to healthcare practitioners. The MSLs are selling the drug as well. But the difference is that the MSLs have a robust scientific background, and they are able to discuss about science. So when we are thinking of the sales rep are only able to talk about what is described in the SMPC of the products. They cannot talk about anything else. While the MSLs, they can discuss maybe perhaps a new indication. They can talk about science, but in a way, they are selling the product, and they have a very close relationship with the physicians. So that's why they need to have a robust scientific background. And as well for MSL, most of the times they are requesting to have you to have a PhD. So in a way, now that I've been talking about the different roles involved with clinical trials, I would like to ask, to ask you the question of, or maybe to have an answer of the question to, is a PhD needed when you would like to start working in the private sector or in the pharmaceutical industry? Of course, it depends. If you are looking for a very scientific role like medical affairs of MSLs, probably a PhD will be needed. If you are requesting for other roles that are not that scientific, probably you won't need a PhD. But from my point of view, when you are doing a PhD, you are developing a lot of soft skills. And these soft skills could be, for example, critical thinking. No, it's more like you know how to analyze the data, you know how to come to, with your own conclusions, you know how to discuss about this data, you know how to present, how to communicate, even if it's oral or if it's in written, because you are writing publications, you are going to conferences. Then you know how to collaborate with other, right? Teamwork. Also, you, in a way, you are leading a project, right? So you are learning about project management skills. And also, if you have the opportunity to mentor somebody or to teach somebody, you can have also these leadership skills. And also, of course, problem solving. So for that, I think that you need to think when you are doing this PhD, why it's going to be useful. You are developing at the same time. You are doing a really hard job, right? You are doing a lot of things. You are working very hard. So definitely, if you ask me if you would recommend somebody to do a PhD, I would say yes, because of course it's useful. If you like scientific, if you are like science, I would recommend it. You know, it's going to be useful because all those soft skills that I've just described, this is something that every company would like to have in a person, right? So these are the skills that they are always requesting. So one of the things that I would like also to share with you is, I remember when I finished my PhD, I was feeling really powerful. I was feeling that I was able to do everything, you know, really difficult jobs. I was saying I can get really difficult jobs. I am able to do it. And then I remember that I start from scratch. I start from as a CRA, right? I can tell you that you need to do this because, of course, the academic research world and the private sector is a completely different thing. So you are learning different things, right? But one of the things that I realize is if you have a PhD, although you probably will need to start from scratch, I'm sure that probably you might be able to progress quickly. So I would like to finish with a sentence, and my sentence is, if you have a clear picture of which is the role that you want to do, let's go for it, be persistent, and never give up. I think that to be persistent in my life has helped me a lot. It's not easy, it's not an easy world, but you know, if you have a clear picture that you want to achieve something, fight for it. And my last recommendation would be in terms of professional education, the more that you have, the better. Because even that, for example, now I have 9 years of experience in medical affairs. When I look for a new job, they are always requesting me, you know, maybe to have expertise in the therapeutic area that I don't have. Or maybe, you know, if I have expertise in global, they ask me for expertise in local. So I think that it's good. The more professional education that you have, the better. So thank you very much. Now I think, having said this, I am going to hand over to Fernando.
Hi everyone, and thank you, Anna, for this for introducing me. So as I also would like to thank you, the BIST, for giving me the opportunity to join to this webinar, since I have recently moved from the academy to the private sector. So my experience is only about 9 months, but I think it's very interesting that because I would like to share my experience of how I changed from the laboratory to the private sector. So as Margarita says, I'm working in Solti, which is a company that performs independent clinical research, particularly in breast cancer. So firstly, I wanted to tell you or to explain you all my background and how I get to this position. So I studied biochemistry in the Universidad of Valencia. Then I moved to Madrid to do my PhD in breast cancer research. And after that, I was thinking, okay, should I do a postdoc? Should I try to do a different thing? But because I was happy doing research, I decided to continue with the investigation. So I decided to do a postdoc, and I came here to Barcelona, and I started to work as a postdoc in the IRB Barcelona. Maybe some of you that you are connected now, you work there. So I performed there a postdoc, also participating in researching projects in breast cancer mainly. But after, I will say that 4 or 5 years, I decided that I wanted to change. And why wanted to change? Mainly because 3 different things. First, I wanted to find some type of job more applied to the patients, or something more with more applicability, you know. And secondly, I was aware that stay in academy was not going to be easy, so it's a difficult path. And third, I wanted to get a better conditions, not only salary conditions, but in general better conditions. So after 4 or 5 years of postdoc, I think it was the time to try to move. So what did I do? So first, I tried to contact people. Firstly, I tried to contact people actually from IRB that I knew that they were able to change from the academy to the industry. So I started to contact them. Then I create a good profile in LinkedIn to try to increase this network of people. Third, I wrote my CV. I wrote a completely different CV compared to the CV that I had for the academy. So it was very, very different. And after these 3 processes, I created a good network of people that I met with several people, and they gave me a lot of advices. I was asking several things about the different roles out of the academy. So I was able to meet monitors of clinical trials, people working in marketing, scientific writers, people working in the regulatory departments, and also people working in the medical department. Actually, I met with a lot of people that were doing research for several years, and they had a PhD, and now they are in the pharmaceutical industry as a MSL, as Anna very well explained previously. So after having all this knowledge, I consider that I wanted to move to the clinical trials field. But what I didn't want to do is to do a master to be a monitor of clinical trials. I didn't mind to do a master, but I didn't want to start the process as a monitor, you know, because after 5 years of PhD and then 4 years of postdoc, I think that I could try to get something better in this field. So after thinking a lot, finally I was advised that the best way to do the transition, as Anna said, was to do a master's degree. So finally I decided to apply for an MBA master, also in ESAME, to learn about the pharmaceutical industry, but also, of course, to have the opportunity to get a trainee position in some pharmaceutical company in order to develop my career. But I have to admit that I wanted to do something in the field of clinical trials. So in parallel, during the process of this application to this master, in parallel, I was continuously looking for positions related to clinical trials. And in that moment was when I knew Solti. Some people had talked me about Solti before, and they told me that this was a very nice company to develop as a professional in clinical trials. And in LinkedIn, I think, was able to see this a position, but not in a scientific department, but in the scientific communication department. So it was completely different what I expected to do. But anyway, because I consider that this was a very good company and I wanted to try to contact them somehow, I decided to write and apply for this position, this scientific communication. But in this application letter, I also explained that I wanted to, I think I was open to do other kind of jobs that the company could offer to me. So the company called me and told me, Fernando, you have a very good profile, but you don't fit in the position of scientific communication. So, but they told me, but we would like to offer to you some other position where you can fit better. So what I did was to apply for that, and it was a position of scientific manager. They explained to me the role of this position, and I really like it, and I will explain later what is this position about. But I was super excited about this position, and finally they told me, well, actually we are looking for someone with more experience in the clinical trials field. You have a very good scientific background, but we need something else. So finally I had to say, okay, bye-bye. So I decided to continue with the path with the master's degree. And I started to do some, I got a trainee positions before to start the master lessons. I got a trainee position in Angem, which is a pharmaceutical company in the medical department, to try to maybe to go to a position kind of MSL or in medical affairs department. So I was working there as a trainee around during 1 month or 1 month and a half. And again, Solti contacted me and they told me that they were happy to offer me again this position, scientific manager, and in the past they couldn't give me. So I was super happy for that, and I decided to stop of the project regarding the master and the medical affairs department in the pharmaceutical company, and I decided to move to the clinical trials world with the position of scientific manager. So now I would like to explain you what we do in Solti. So Solti is a company that, as I previously mentioned, we perform independent clinical research in the field of breast cancer research. So what's the difference between Solti and a CRO mainly? Solti somehow is a CRO because we receive funding from the pharmaceutical industry, but the main difference is that Solti is the owner of the idea of the clinical trial and is the promoter of this clinical trial. So we are not rendering services to the pharmaceutical industry, but we are just getting the funding from them and developing our own projects. Okay, so Solti is developing several types of clinical trials involving phase 1, phase 2 clinical trials, but we also have a program, a biomarker program to do kind of more translational research combined with clinical research. And this is very nice because it's very good for combining my scientific knowledge with the translational research in clinical trials. But of course, as I mentioned, we also develop phase 1, phase 2, and in the future, probably phase 3 studies. So I would like to tell you what are the roles in the company, in the company of Solti. So we have project managers, which is similar to the role of clinical project manager, as Anna mentioned before. There are people working in the regulatory department. There are also monitor clinical trials. We have financial controllers to basically control the budget and the money of the company. And we also have a position that I'm developing, which is scientific manager. So all of these positions, they are not separate positions, but we are constantly with an interaction. So we are working together every day. We have a lot of meetings and we are constantly interchanging some information. So from the scientific department at Salty, what we do, so what generate the idea of the clinical trials, we develop the clinical trials, and we also participate in the dissemination of the result of the clinical trial. So basically, I participate in the preparation of the protocol, writing this protocol, the synopsis of the idea of the clinical trial, but I also participate in the logistic to set up everything necessary for the development of the clinical trials. And this includes, for instance, the sample management, also some stuff related with data management. I also developed the study plans to perform the clinical trials. So basically what a scientific manager does in a clinical trials is to ensure that all scientific variables are properly collected during the trial. So it's very important to have a very scientific background here, because when you need to know, of course, medical knowledge about how the patients are being treated and everything, but these things, even you don't know before starting this position, you can learn there because you have the ability to read papers, to go to some training sessions. So it's not complicated if you are a scientist, if you have a scientific background to learn about clinical things. Of course, we also, my role is also specialist in trying to interact with medical oncologists, these key opinion leaders, but also with the pharmaceutical industry, just to interchange scientific information and to get funding. Of course, I also participate in the development of the publications, the study publications, not only papers, but also writing some abstracts or to go to some scientific conferences, so to some congresses. So basically, this is what I do. If you have more questions later, you can ask me without problems. So finally, I would like to say that I'm very happy to be here because it was not easy to change and to get this position. And I must say that I like a lot. I'm very happy to do this transition because I like the job that I'm doing. It's a very scientific job, and this is super exciting. My conditions are quite better than when I was doing a postdoc, and of course I'm learning a lot every day. Every day that I go to the office, I learn a lot of new things, and this is why also in the beginning it's been a little bit hard because I'm very junior in this, and I have a lot of tasks to learn, and I have to say that even the conditions are better, you also have to work a lot. So it's not that you have changed from the academy and okay, now you are going to work just a little bit. No, you work a lot as well. This is an important thing. But anyway, I'm very happy because of these changes. And to finish, I just would like to give you some recommendations on some key points that maybe can help you to transit from the academy to the industry. Well, I think one of the most important things is to develop a good CV. And a good CV, as I previously mentioned, completely different with compared to the CV that you have for the academy. So you have to be able to write your scientific transferable skills in this CV more adapted to the industry. So you can, my advice is that you can have to write all these transferable skills, but always trying to justify why you have this skill, not only just writing down and that's it. No, just to give some examples about how you can develop this skill. And some of the skills are critical thinking, as Anna mentioned. You have to have a very cooperative behavior, team working skills, project management skills, scientific writing skills, communication skills. So all of these things, most of us, we have when we do a PhD. I think this is very clear that all of these things we can do in the academy, and we can transfer this to the industry. And the second factor, apart from the CV, that is very important for me was, in my particular case, was to have a PhD, and I would say that also a postdoc experience, because they were looking for a very scientific role, and I think that without a postdoc and without the publication track that you can get during this postdoc, it's difficult to find this kind of positions. But of course, I'm working about my particular case. And finally, one very important thing that you need is to have a very high motivation to move. So you have to be able to find which is your target, what would you want to do, because otherwise you cannot find this motivation to move. And of course, you need to show your proactivity to try to take part of this new company. So in general, these are my advice. I think that it's difficult to change from the academy to the industry, but it's not impossible. You can do it without a master, but it's difficult. I was lucky to get without doing a master's degree, but I don't discard to do a master in the future. But in general, all the recommendations that I had, and most of the people that I know, they need a master's degree to try to go to the industry. But never always you have to try to do it without a master. You can do it in parallel as I did. And basically, this is what I wanted to tell you. Then you can ask whatever you want, or if you want to contact me by LinkedIn, just feel free to do it, and it would be a pleasure to share my experience with you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Fernando. I would like to personally introduce our next speaker, Tania Bayón, and take the opportunity to apologize to her for introducing her incorrectly at the start of the webinar. So Tania is a clinical operations lead and manager at the Syneos Health. Thank you, Tania, for being here, and I'm sorry about my mistake.
No problem. Hi, everyone. Today it's Friday, so welcome on board. And don't worry about the misunderstanding, no problem. Let me introduce myself a little bit. My name is Tania Bayón, and I am, as mentioned before, I am a clinical operations lead and line manager in Syneos Health. I am working from the Department of Oncology and Hematology Business Unit. My profile is different by the other speakers because I don't have a PhD. I have a bachelor degree in pharmacy and master degree in clinical trials monitoring and medical affairs in the pharmaceutical and biotechnology industry. I started a little bit after, right now, after the career, the bachelor. I started the master's degree because for me was very clear, because during my career I showed that the clinical trials was an important thing, and I would like to work with this because I have a personal experience. My mother died for cancer. So in that moment, this is a motivation for me to continue working on studying pharmacy, and also to try to find a drug or something like this to help people with cancer. This is my motivations since the beginning. So I have more than 6 years experience of clinical trials. I was starting when I was 23. And I also have experience in complex therapeutics areas as oncology and different phases, as mentioned in the first speaker, phase 1, 2, 3, and 4. I have been involved in all the phases of the clinic of the investigational product. I am going to speak about what is my daily day. So as a clinical operation lead, is like a clinical trial manager, because it depends of the different companies, the nomenclature is different, but it's more or less the same. I am the functional lead. I am accountable of the clinical monitoring and site management delivery of a study assigned. I provide leadership and mentoring and technical support for all my team. I am in charge on Europe and try to get the deliveries to the client with the achievement of financial goals, because when you work for a private company, you have to try to find the balance between the deliverables and also the financial aspects. I am very enthusiastic and motivated person. I think it's one of the skills that you need for working in a pharmacy industry, because, and also to be good deep in extensive research, because it's a very complicated sector, because you have to work very hard and a lot of hours, and you have a motivation, and I like a lot my work. You should have to be very proactive and also willingness to learn and fast to take new skills and adapt it to a multicultural and multidisciplinary environments, because we are in a global world and we are working in the same time with people in US, in AP and Asia. So you have to accommodate also your time. This is maybe in some cases a fair, and also in other cases is a good thing, because you honor your time and you are flexibility in order to organize your time. So this is not bad. So it depends of the cases as you like. I have therapeutic experience in different disease, in these different research aspects as oncology, hematology, oncohematology, cardiology, digestive, respiratory, and mental disorders. But for me, the most interesting one is oncology at the moment. The other one is not a bad file, but for me, it's interesting to work on that. I started my professional career in 2012 as a CRA trainee. After finish my master's degree in a private institution in Spain, I am going to refer also for the private institution in Spain, because I don't know the other abroad Spain. So after that, I started as a clinical research associate, as the first speaker as well. So I started 1 year as this, providing support to the primary CRA in a small company, clinical research organization, providing support to the primary CRA in the study and side of perform monitoring visits, and understand and learn about how is the work in this file. So the main aspects to perform as clinical research organization is verification of the data, monitoring visit reports, review the adverse events, complete startup activities related to the submission and to the competent authorities, ethics committees and regulatory agency, to collect essential documents, because all the clinical trials needs a lot of documentation and approvals in order to set up. And also participate in supporting feasibility studies. Feasibility studies is like when you are tentative, you are going to tentative any investigator, any key opinion leader in order to participate in your clinical trial. You present the drug, the design of the study, and they decided to do that. I forget, sorry, to mention another important thing in my career, as I am a young profile. I was working also 6 months in the pharmacy of Gregorio Marañón in the department of the clinical trials, in the oncology department. And I did my final thesis or project of the end of my career in one antiemetic, aprepitant. It was an observational study in patients with moderate chemotherapy, emetic. So this was an observational study with another college, and I went and visited, for example, different areas of the hospital and the hospital, and evaluate and observe these drugs in the patients. So this was my final work, my final project of my career, and after that I was a Series A junior after performing my master degree, and then I decided to move to another Series a little bit better, because I was working in a small Series and they offered to me a better conditions, not only the salary, but the flexibility and support and development of my career. And after that, I received an offer for another top 5 Series. This was PPD. And in PPD, I grew up very quick because I was working in an important clinical trial. The commercialization of Truxima is the biosimilar of rituximab. So this was the first biosimilar commercial in Europe and also in the US. So I remember that this was a very a hard work period of my life, because I was expecting for the FDA, the Food and Drug Administration in America, and also for the local agency. So finally, we passed the inspection. This was an inspection. 2 American guys come on to Barcelona and stay with me and another 10 people from Korea, because the clinic, the owner of the drug, the laboratory owner, in that case, was from Korea. And finally we get it, and it was a really good experience, very hard, but was very good. And I was promoted to a lead Series A and also senior, and started to learn about the task of management a team in an international world, designing on implementing clinical tools and process for the study team to support the execution of the clinical deliverables and study timelines. Also review the risks and issue escalations, on monitoring visit report review, supporting global clinical trial manager to coordinate the clinical trials, and oversee of clinical research associate, and also mentoring the junior clinical research associate, and also perform some trainings in the office of Madrid. Implementing risk management strategies and contingency plans for the clinical trials. After that, the company opened a new place, new roles as clinical trial manager, official clinical trial manager globally, and I was presenting. In the meantime, I received an offer for the competency of the PPD in that moment, and I was involved into selection process in the meantime, and I passed both of them, but finally I received a better conditions, salary and development of my professional career, and decided to move to seniors health when I was working since January of 2019. And I was starting as clinical trial manager, manage the clinical trial in Europe, development of the clinical management plan. This is, for example, a guidelines that I have to provide to the CRAs in order to know how the tasks they have to do and when they have to prepare the monitoring visits, and to follow up with investigators, the study nurse, what are the specific protocol deviations. And also I have the person in contact with the client. In this case, the client is the pharmaceutical company. I always be in contact in meetings with them, ensuring alignment of clinical activities with the budget. I also participate in a business development proposal and defense meetings. Was a really good experience in the last year in July of 2019. Was my first time. I traveled to San Francisco in US and prepare with another upper management team and directors and vice presidents of the company the proposal for the biotech, because as you know, or maybe you don't know, there are a lot of pharmaceutical companies located in the West Coast, in San Francisco, AstraZeneca, and or more or less, and the headquarters are there, and also in New York, but there are a lot of headquarters there. So we prepared, they contacted with us because they would like to develop a clinical trial because they have a drug and they have to improve this drug in humans. So we developed the proposal with different aspects of the clinical trials and also the budget. For example, the pharmacovigilance of how we manage the adverse events of the patients, the concomitant medication, the biostatistic of the data, the medical writing, because we also have associated a medical in our company. We have some oncologists that they decided to pass to the pharmacy industry because they was on a clinical. For example, one of the medical director of my company was an oncologist in the Valdebron, Hospital Valdebron, but she decided to leave the clinical because it's very hard to see the patients every day with these kind of conditions and to move to the industry in order to investigate for a better options for them. So we presented all of these tasks, and in these cases, these kind of meetings, be defense meetings or business meetings, they attend a lot of people specialized in different aspects of their role, clinical operations, medical writers, project management, finance, logistics manager, in order to propose the better options and explain how we are going to manage the clinical trial. Finally, we get it, and now I am involved in this clinical trial. I manage the Europe part. I manage 9 countries at the moment: Switzerland, UK, France, Spain, Italy, Netherlands, Germany, and Poland, and maybe forget one, in order to to set up and to control all the things related to the patients and the clinical trial in Europe, and provide feedback and set up to also and feedback and to the client, to the sponsor, in order if we have some troubles, because now the situation with the COVID is very complicated, because some patients are immunodepressed and they are not willing to go to the hospital and they prefer to stay at home, and we are living a really complicated situation at the moment. But I think this is a good opportunity to learn a lot and and go through in advance, because this is a historical situation. So after 1 year in Syneos Health, I started that also as line manager. This is another role. I combine both of them at the moment, because clinical operations lead or clinical trial manager is role to manage the operational things of the clinical trials, but line manager manages the career development of the career of the person. So I have a junior CRA and I try to support her and provide training, support, and my experience and my situations in the past, in order to support her and to provide uh, development of her on different skills, personal skills, and skills related to also to the job. So this is my actual situation, and I am very happy on that. And after this information, I only would like to share with you that you can choose for sure to do a PhD. This is a good opportunity and you can develop a really good skills. And but after that, you also change to a pharmacy industry. And also, if you decided to don't do a PhD for different reasons, you have another ways. It is true that you should have to do a master's degree probably, but it is a good option. All the people after PhD or not have to start as a trainee, because the pharmaceutical industry, they have the owner shops and procedures, and this is for all the people. For finish my speaker, I would like to also to share with you that I am a master degree teacher. This is not the correct word, I think, because only do 2 lessons. I think I am a master degree speaker like this in science 3 years ago in la Universidad Autónoma of Madrid, in clinical trials master degree. And I provide 2 lessons because I also have experience in melanoma, and I give the therapeutic point of view at the moment, the different lines of investigation in melanoma, and also the feedback and the diagnosis and prediction of melanoma cancer at the moment. So thank you for providing me this opportunity to speak to all of you. I have active LinkedIn. You can also find myself and ask everything that you want. I am looking forward to hear anything from you. So thank you so much, and this is all for me. And if you have any questions, so please go ahead, no problem. Thank you.
Thank you, Tanya. Thank you, Ana, and thank you, Fernando, for your insights. It has been a real pleasure listening to you. So now I would like to open the floor to questions from the audience. And We have already received some, and we'll try our best to discuss them all. However, if we do not have enough time, I also encourage you to reach our speakers on LinkedIn, as all of them have actually invited you to do. As you can see, they're more than open to reply to your comments. Okay, so the first question we have is, it's from Nicoleta. She says, hi, I would like to ask you, how did you gain the management knowledge? Because in the academic field, you often don't have this type of skills. So, yeah, I see, Anna, you have unmuted your microphone. No?
And, I mean, everybody can answer, eh? But I think that, you know, I don't think that in the academic research you are not developing these skills. From my point of view, because I've never done a master or, you know, a course in project management. So leading a project in a way like writing a thesis for me is a project itself. So that's why, I mean, you develop these project management skills because you need to organize yourself. You need to know, you know, in terms of times, when you need to have a deliverable, when you need to finish an experiment, when you need to present your thesis, etc. So from my point of view, this is something maybe in a different way, right? But I think that you start developing these project management skills while you are writing your thesis.
Well, as Anna says, I completely share what she said. Of course, in the academy, we cannot learn all the skills, all the management skills that we need. And actually, I'm learning right now a lot. But of course, I think we have some of these management skills. For instance, most of us, maybe we have written a grant when we are in the laboratory. And in a grant, you have to write exactly how you are going from a scientific perspective of view, how you are going to manage the project. So of course, this is a very completely different task that will compared to that you will do in the industry, but the skills that you need for that, maybe you already get it in the academy, just by writing a grant, trying to planning your projects, your experiments. Of course, it's going to be different, but this is the way that you have to show to the recruiter in the industry to show that you have kind of these skills to develop the procedures in the industry. Then you will learn a lot of this, but at least some background you already have for that.
Okay, thank you. From Hasna, she says, good afternoon. I would like to thank speakers for giving us insights into their careers and perspectives we have as researchers. I would like to ask if it is necessary to have a biological or pharmacy-related educational background in order to develop career in clinical trials management, and what would perspectives of the one with more technical background, for example, bioengineering or bioinformatics?
As per my understanding, yes, the response is yes. You need a background on clinical, a background on science of, and also on health careers. I mean, for example, you need a background in biology, biochemistry, veterinary, medicines, nurse. I think also in some cases physiotherapy, or I know that in the US they also admit psychologists because they consider that psychologist is also a health background.
I would like to say, I don't know if you, Margarita, mentioned that, for instance, bioinformatics.
Yes, that's right, bioinformatics.
In my particular case, bioinformatics is, at least in the part of analyzing the results of a clinical trial, is super important. So it's absolutely necessary. Actually, in Salty, there are people working as a bioinformatic and as biostatistician. So it's very, very important and a very valuable role, because it's not easy to find informatics or bioinformatics that they want to develop their careers in this way. So I would say that you
Yes,
can.
but it is not like a clinical trials as this. Is they working as a program and also in the databases. No, it's not like manage or
Well, as a data manager, maybe if you have that some kind of bioinformatic background is important, I think.
yeah, probably. And also mathematics, but they
Mhm.
manage biostatistical data of the clinical trials.
And of course, I would say that they are also in the part of the regulatory. Of course, it's better to have some background, but some people, they don't have this background. They are even lawyers, you know, somehow.
Yeah.
So as you must already be aware, we have 3 panelists that are working in clinical trials, but actually coming from very different, well, from different kind of organizations. So Anna is more, has a long trajectory in pharmaceutical companies. Fer is actually working in a private company, and Tanya is in a CRO, and let's say in the day-to-day with clinical trials. So I think it's normal to have these different points of view, right? What's needed in one company might not be so necessary in another. Okay, so we go with the next question, and it has to do with the master's program, and specifically in Barcelona. The question is, what is the best? If you could explain what kind of master's programs we have available, and which would you think is the best quality price ratio from your experience?
I know there are different institutions also in Barcelona, because I think they have the same office in Madrid, in Barcelona. I study in CSIC. It's a private institution. I know there is in Barcelona and also in Madrid. For my opinion, the best institution are EFOS and CSIC, because they have many master degrees and they have a lot of background with a different pharmaceutical companies and offer different training programs and a really big menu of masters, so related to different departments of the pharmaceutical industry, for example, marketing, clinical trials, biotechnology, production, very specific. Also, there is a public master degree between middle private and middle public. There is not bad, but I think the difference between this is the program training, because the CSIF and EFOS, the private institution, they have a really good agreements with the pharmaceutical industry, and it is easier to, after the training program, to start working on them, in my opinion.
So to be honest, I think that I prefer Fernando and Tania to answer this question, because probably I'm the oldest here. And at the time that I was doing the master, it was a long time ago. So as I said, I did the master with SME, and SME was working with University of Barcelona at that time. Now what I can say is that I'm giving some classes in the Master of the CIV. That is, the name of the master is Clinical Trials and Medical Affairs. This is the only one that I know that is currently ongoing. But in terms of prices, in terms of quality, in comparison with others, I don't have any other reference, so I cannot help you with this, because as I said, it was a long time ago. Sorry for this.
Well, in my case, as you know, finally I didn't perform the master, but I was applying for doing the ESAME one. And as far as I know, ESAME now, they have 3 different masters. One is specifically for clinical trials, more focused on being a monitor of clinical trials. Then that Anna mentioned, I think medical departments in scientific departments in the pharmaceutical industry or something like that. And from there, you can go to different areas in the pharmaceutical industry, such as the regulatory, pharmacovigilance, and kind of a medical department as well. And also the MBA, the MBA master that gives you broad example of how a pharmaceutical company works in general. And they give you some background in marketing, but also in some skills for the medical department. But some of these, for instance, in ESAME, you can start, you can choose one master degree, but you can go for the same trainee positions than the other master. So maybe the master is not so important, but the positions that you can apply for that, for doing the trainee position of the program, the master.
Okay, thank you to the 3 of you. We have a couple of questions relating to the same thing, and it has to do with the fact, or the question is, if the topic or the area of a PhD is relevant to get a certain position. Because if you have to do a master's in any case, or in most cases, the question is if you're getting the necessary training for the master's, or if it's really important what you've done your PhD in to get a specific position.
Well, in my opinion, I think it's a plus, of course, if some job offer is related to the field that you are specialized. Of course, you have more points than other people to get that position. But I think it's not completely necessary. So I think the scientific background is enough to demonstrate that you have the ability to adapt to other fields. But of course, if there are cancer position, it's better that you have some cancer background. In my case, in my particular case, I think it was really important to have some experience in breast cancer research. But I think this is a very particular case, and it's not so. It's more important than in other occasions, I think. But I think that, of course, there are a lot of factors that we haven't mentioned before in this world. But apart from the CV, your background, all your skills, you also need kind of lucky component. And it's not small, this component, but everybody knows that in the life there is a percentage of luckiness. And for instance, in my case, I have the opportunity to meet the scientific director, and this person trusts me to develop the function of scientific manager. And this is very important, that someone trusts in you to give this kind of opportunity. And for that, you need to demonstrate that you have a lot of skills to do that position.
I would agree with Fernando. So in a way, sometimes it's not the topic that you have done the PhD, it's more that if you have expertise in some therapeutic area. So as Fernando has mentioned, for example, I've been trying to work in oncology for a long time, but because I don't have any expertise in oncology, I never had the opportunity to work in oncology. So oncology, it could be one of the places maybe that they require to have some expertise in oncology. But as I said, not only the PhD, could be other expertise, right? If you have worked in a CRO that as Tanya and Fernando, they are working with oncology, right? And maybe Tanya has not a PhD, but because now she is working in oncology, probably it will be easier for her to find a role related to oncology. So yeah, I would agree with Fernando.
Okay, and time for a last question, which is actually a very, it's more than one. how connected do you feel with science in your position? And in this sense, what aspects from your scientific career have been more difficult to change, and what has been the most rewarding aspect of in your position with respect to your scientific career? So it has to go, this has to do with this change from being a scientist to going into industry.
Well, so you mean that the troubles that we have to change, or the main different things that we do? I'm not sure.
Well, a little bit of both.
Okay. Well, no, it's okay. So for me, the main difference was that one day I was working with my pipettes in the bench and doing to the microscope and then to the computer and then doing other things, and then everything changed and everything is a computer and your head and a screen, and you are all the day in front of the screen. So it's a kind of job less, how to say, less changing. Is you are doing a lot of different things, but like in the same position, you know. And I think this is important to mention, because we are in the laboratory, we are used to move, to go here, to go back, and here is you have a lot of meetings, maybe you have some travels, but it's important to know how to focus every day in the computer.
In my case, maybe, you know, when I was working in the academic world, I was feeling that maybe it was more far away to the patient, right? While working in the pharmaceutical company, I'm feeling that I'm more close to the patient. And in a way, it's science, right? It's a scientific role. So in a way, it's what we can do for patients. So I feel really close to science all the time, because this is something that I always love. And that's why I didn't say, but I love my job. I love what I'm doing. You know, having the opportunity to work with physicians, to discuss with them all the data that we have with a specific product, and to see how we can help patients, I think that this is really grateful.
And I would like to add that something that it was not difficult for me, but it's different if we compare private companies and the academic research. It's regarding the teamwork skills of team working. Of course, in the laboratory we also have teamwork, but I would say that is in a different way. That in the private company, you have to really apply this in terms that you don't have. You cannot take all the decisions that maybe in your research project you can do it, so you are more limited in this sense. So you have to agree with this, and this is important. Even you can propose many things, and everybody is going to hear you, but it's important to know that the decision is that you are going to take. They are different. You also take decisions, but they are different, and you are constantly depending of the work of the rest of the people in your company. Of course, in the laboratory as well, but anyway, you have your own project. So you manage for doing your experiments. Of course, you depend on some facilities, on some collaborators, but I would say that team working is much more frequent in the industry compared to the academy.
Okay. Once again, thank you, Ana, Tania, and Fernando, for your time and your collaboration in this BIST Career Webinar. I hope you enjoyed participating as much as we did listening to you. It's been a real pleasure. On behalf of BIST, I would like to thank you all for spending this afternoon with us. Stay tuned for our next career webinar, which will be held in 2 weeks' time. And I wish you a wonderful evening, and hope you and your loved ones stay safe and healthy. Until next time, good evening.